So, like, I always talk about, the reality of demonic spirits being attached to objects, being attached to the people in our lives that are family members. And, you'll see symptoms of, like, your own mother growling, you know what I mean, in a voice, in a tone that is not normal, and like a male's voice. And you see all these types of things where, all your electronics will start going off all at once, and they all turn on at once. Like, you might have an electric toothbrush, a face scrubber, all these different electrical appliances will all just go off at once. And your toothbrush will turn on and start buzzing, along with, at the same time, every other electrical device in the house. And it's not an electricity problem because you've regulated and checked all of that stuff. And then you get lights flickering on and off and pictures flying off the wall. Okay. And this is a true story. I mean, this is what I faced at the time of my dad's death, when I came to be a support and a loving, caring son to my mother, who, I realized was very infantile due to the parentification and the transfer of responsibility her whole life. And so they bury their head in the sand. They turn the other way. They deny, they ghost, they vanish, they run. They don't want to look at the reality. They only want a fantasy, and they get mad at you when you pierce through with the light and expose that this thinking pattern is just a setup to supply the support that you need for a lie, for an act, for a performance. It's not genuine identity here, but it is stealing your energy deliberately to try to uphold and fuel and support the delusion of grandiosity in the person that is threatened by you because of the insecurity and the competition that occurs from that, the comparing only. And they start to compare with you and start to get envious and jealous and begin to move to try to stop your growth and development, to interrupt and block and get in the way and kick out the legs of a chair you're sitting on. I say that a lot because that's what it's like. They invite you to sit down on the chair and love bomb you this way, only to roll reverse as soon as you commit. And then that commitment is a betrayal, because they're already, getting ready to pull the rug out from under your feet, because it's a game. It's a game. And they only think about winning and losing. And you're a threat to winning that attention. They don't want you winning that attention on you. And if you ever become, a person that's believable and a person that's credible, and, this is like the biggest fear that they have. But when I came, and my mom is not a believer, and I come to find out that she's been participating in behavior that is very damaging and destructive and self-harming and self-mutilating, but also dragging me under that same mess to put it on me to carry as a way of slowing me down, as a way of distracting me from paying attention to myself and what God has called me to do. But there's all these signs of demonic activity in a person's life, and the blindness is so great, and truly the openness and the passiveness that exist in the face of such obvious harassing spirits and evil spirits and jokester, trickster spirits that end up trying to hurt family members. And I remember one day we were over there visiting, and I had a friend over, and she went to the door to walk out and open the door, and she felt as if something pushed her down the stairs, and she hurt her muscle in her leg very bad. And I remember seeing my mom on the couch, and her back was to the front door, and she just turned around and smirked really big, at the pain and loss and hurt and suffering. So I realized right away that, I was dealing with way more than just the common average, everyday quote unquote mental illness, because there's so much evidence of this paranormal / poltergeist / demon activity, and they all behave the same. And once you really see it, you'll realize how to deal with it and face this kind of spiritual warfare. But these demon entities are all around our family members, and there's all these signs. Like when you start seeing like disappearing objects, I can't tell you how many times I'd put like a succulent plant on the table, and then I'd go out for a walk. I'd come back. It'd be gone. Doors are locked. You know what I mean? And what are you going to do? Call the police and tell them that your succulent plant went missing? And then 2 weeks later, it appears in the spot that you looked. So maybe it's just that this reality doesn't work the way we think or the way we've been told. And we've been saturated with nothing but lies. Even our sciences, our institutions, all of it. You put your set of keys or your cell phone down in a place you always put it, and then you turn around a minute later and it's gone. You and your family search high and low for it, but it cannot be found, right? So later, sometimes days later or longer, the object just mysteriously reappears in the very place that you put it always. So, or more bizarrely, you later find it in a ridiculous place, like high on a bookshelf, way up out of sight, or in a shoebox, or in a closet, or some other spot where you never put it in a million years. And this is known as really a disappearing object phenomenon, but it happens all the time to me. It happens all the time to me. And it is because there is a loosing of these entities and spirits like we've never seen before. And they don't mean us well. It's all a big mask that this power is wearing as it presents itself in different forms to many of us who can see. But it's very malevolent and very dark and evil and very harassing. So it's like, you'll find your phone in a shoebox or in a closet or some spot you'd never put it in a million years. And how many times has that happened when we're dealing with and working with others that are influenced by demonic activity, and how much the demons, when they see a spirit-filled, born-again believer, start to tremble and shake even over the presence of the Lord, because they know their time is over. And, there's a real believer here that is able to cast out demons. And, that is a power that God will give some of us. And so there's tons of other examples, but just, I just wanted to say, like, objects levitating or being thrown or moving on their own. How many times just sitting there watching TV with, family members, and then when you used to be able to be around them, that is, years ago, they're totally engrossed in a dramatic movie, and when suddenly the bowl of popcorn you've been munching on from just rises from the coffee table and floats through the air a few feet, then drops on the floor, or, you're having a loud argument with, maybe your children or something, and as your child storms out of the room, books and knickknacks come hurling off the bookcase as if reacting to the young girl's anger, maybe. Okay, so the movement of physical objects like this can be quite dramatic and can be as slight as a box of Tic Tacs sliding a few inches across the tabletop, or as amazing as a heavy refrigerator levitating off the kitchen floor. But we have to start to become aware that there is this influence, and it is invisible to our natural human eyes. But when we're born again and receive this opening of the eyes of our heart, we start to have this spiritual understanding and spiritual eyes. And these entities do not like that. Okay. And they're going to do everything they can to try to discredit and block and stop you from speaking about it. There's scents and odors that begin to take place when you're around someone that has got these spiritual attachments, and no one in your house smokes yet. On occasion, this distinct smell of a cigarette or cigar smoke can be detected in the bathroom or something, or as you're dressing for bed, suddenly this overpowering scent of lilacs fills the room. Okay, so these are symptoms, and it's not your dead relative coming back to try to give you a message, I don't believe, because these entities can masquerade as family and relatives and transform themselves to whatever needs to be seen by you to get you to accept, certain things that God might not want you to accept, but because of the nature of this, angel of light appearing to be, right? So I think these entities do have power to transform themselves and shapeshift and present themselves to us as if they're human, but a lot of the time we catch the little warning signs and the normal but abnormal behavior in these people. And as stated above, like basically all kinds of smells can utter your house from the outside, even from a passing car. So such sense might not necessarily mean demonic possession. That's not what I'm saying, but it can be. Like such sense and odors can be really a sign of demonic activity and really associated with a spirit or with a residual type spirit remaining in a house. Okay. And there's all kinds of electrical interference, like I was saying, before. When I'd come into the house, all of a sudden it would only happen when I came into the house and would start praying. And so, maybe, Johnny's having a tough time at school. And sometimes when he enters the living room with that scowl on his face, the overhead light and lamps flicker. Or it's 3:00 in the morning and you're shocked out of sleep by a stereo in the den just turning on full blast and it doesn't have a remote control. And that could have set it off accidentally, really, either from inside or outside the house. So these types of occurrences begin to start happening. Or power from nowhere. These are just different things that I saw in my experience after my dad's death with family members that were not only participating in the community-based policing and abuse in my life for 25 years, but also were hiding it and playing both sides of the fence and pretending to be such a dear, loved family member that just loved me so much as they would smile in my face and play both sides of the fence without shame. And you'd never know unless God exposed it. That's how good they are at covering their tracks. But it's really psychopathic. But, maybe you're sleeping and suddenly the choo-choo train begins to chug across the living room floor. I mean, you think that's odd, but, you switch it off and put it back down, and a few minutes later, the train starts up again. I mean, this is the type of experience that we have as Christians when we go to battle and we start experiencing spiritual warfare in these degrees. And, there's nothing wrong with the switch on the train. And, you might even have the battery compartment completely open and the batteries are removed. There's no batteries in it, but it just starts up on its own and runs. Okay. And a lot of this is electromagnetic energy weapons and different technologies that are used to legitimize or lead you down a path of, religious ecstasy. I mean, the CIA basically specialized in that, working with different people, driving them to be cult leaders and encouraging that kind of thing. Okay, so these were like, social experiments done by the CIA, and they're very involved in religion. Okay, and especially that of the satanic type, because they use the satanic ritual abuse as a way of mind control and as a way to, terrorize and keep control of people. And it's used in torture. So there's a lot of physical attacks that can happen in a place where you're just around someone in the family that has been doing very dark things and opening themselves up to very wicked spirits. So like you might have parents that are always fighting, and the constant yelling and screaming and is driving you crazy. But, you sit on the floor in the corner of your room crying with your face on your hands. You start to wince from a sudden pain in your back. And when you check it in the mirror, you find that there's scratches on you. You know what I mean? And from unexplained bangs and flying coffee pots, and it's been escalating at whatever household that, you have been invited to, and little did the person know that you're filled with the Holy Spirit and that it wasn't going to go good for the demon in them. It has to get bad before it gets better, I think, for these people to break the agreement that they have, because these entities also can benefit the person. And so it's really hard to break free and really let go and surrender because of the benefits that the host is receiving from this seemingly unseen hand, but not God. So there are physical attacks that can happen. And I've talked about this when I was a young boy, and my parents just labeled it as mental illness when I would have interactions with the shadow people, okay, and battling them and how violent they were, and how it was physical attacks, smothering you, covering your mouth, strangling you, coming around the corner and just strangling you. You know what I mean? So it was very intense. But at a young age, I was experiencing this, but my family was not spiritual at all and didn't understand what was really going on, obviously, and then just called that experience mental illness and, went with that and ran with that when they should have acknowledged the fact that I've got a gift of sight and I'm seeing something in this frequency range that I'm living in. So basically, there's physical attacks that have been documented. Remember the Bell Witch and the other stories, where these entities actually physically attack you, which has happened to me many times growing up, especially with family that, brought in such darkness and shame and dishonor by the self-harming abuse of, covert and malignant sadistic narcissism, which lives off of misery, okay? And without the misery, they don't know what to do, so they create it. Even when there's nothing to be miserable about, they create it just because that is how they feed their victim mentality. And they do it to themselves and then pretend like they haven't. So, and it's all fake. And the crocodile tears start flowing, right? But you don't see any tears ever. But I just wanted to kind of share some of these points and being experienced in this when you're investigating somebody in terms of figuring out, what God is trying to do and what is really taking place in the home of the people that have opened themselves up to such horrible, shameful things like persecuting their own blood and family and trying to eliminate and eradicate, blood and family, your own children, and going along with that and justifying it, excusing it, rationalizing it, saying, I deserve it. And many of us, we're treated the same way. I mean, so whether there is logical reasons, non-paranormal explanations, this is what we see when, after years, our family members that have participated in this community-based policing, gang stalking, harassment and abuse and control, they don't want to acknowledge what they've done. Even though there's facts and proof, they just want to continue to double down on the delusion and fantasy that nothing's wrong here. But we clearly see what has been done to us. And it wasn't fair, the competition game played with our lives. And it was that very competition game that was hidden from the third parties that they were getting to abuse us with. And so there is evil entities that are there for people that want to open themselves up and don't think there's a consequence to engaging in dark, sinful, wicked behavior and pathological lies. And gossip and slander, God does not like. And there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and those that create division amongst brothers. And that's what these people do. They enjoy the breakdown, and they manufacture the breakdown to feel superior and powerful over everyone. It is very petty and infantile. So various kinds of stresses can be the cause of this activity, I'm saying, and including emotional, physical, psychological, and even hormonal stresses. And so somebody that is experiencing this in a family should really examine the personal family dynamics, very well, so that it can be addressed properly. Because most of our families, because they've spent years just looking at all kinds of wickedness with their eyes all the time, filling themselves with this antichrist spirit that really does not want to surrender and give up the control to the king. And so God is using us, and God is exposing these secret, hidden entities and spirits that are attached to things and attached to our loved ones. And the funny thing is when you move to try to get rid of that object and you pick it up and you're like, this is a vintage candlestick, but I'm feeling led to get rid of it and throw it away because there's an attachment here. And then soon as you do, your family member freaks out and shrieks in the bathroom and starts crying all over exaggerated and dramatic. And how could you do this to me? And how could you throw that away? I can't believe you. Who do you think you are? And it's like, no, this is demonic, and you are keeping the door open. And I don't care what the item is. I don't care how emotionally attached you are to it. You need to cut ties with it because it's causing all of this, but they don't want to do that. They just want to drag you through the mud and make you bear the demonic attacks and think that that's cute and funny, that they've got a bunch of demons that they just loose on you. And they know it. They know how screwed up they are and how messed up they are and how there's 100 different personalities in them, all at once. And you don't know which one is going to surface. You know what I mean? So, but this was the case when my dad passed away. And I went to help my mom manage some of the resources to uphold her and to give her a chance to be able to do the work on herself that she never wanted to do. But do you think she took that opportunity? Even though I moved across the country and did whatever I could to be a support and a help at a time of need, the one that was most least likely, the one that was criticized for being mentally ill and crazy and dangerous, that person was the one loving you the most, doing the most, laying down my life the most, being a good example the most. And the decision making along the way was so awesome by God and his leading in my life that all the decisions that I made in the presence of my enemies only resulted in prosperity and blessing and goodness coming to me, which the narcissist was enraged by. Okay? They get enraged when you're breaking free from their control. And they don't want to see you do well. They want to see you do well only if it's through them. Do you understand? And at their dispensing and their, withholding game that they like to play, withholding affection and love and care and support and everything else as they waste their life in that way. When there's so much love and care and friendship and all these things that could take place, but yet they're so reprobate in their minds, they have been so debased in their minds that the only thing they can think when they see someone put together or developed by God is, you are a threat to my attention-getting ways. And I have to do whatever it takes to eliminate, get rid of, discredit, undermine, sabotage, and ruin. Because if anybody sees what God has made you to be, it is going to be bad for me. Do you understand? So it's like God just made us this way through taking us through all this stuff. And then we look back and we see, wow, we're not trying to expose you. It's just that God is the one exposing you through us, and we're just going along with what he's doing and obeying and surrendering to him. But it is really so powerful when God demonstrates our identity and reveals it to the loved ones around us. In him, the answer is yes and amen. How much more will he not freely give you all things? And so we have this life. And that's what they're mad about. They don't think we deserve it. And we don't deserve the grace that's ours, but God has counted us worthy through the cross work and through his own decision making. He has brought about a way to stand and a way to be made right with him. And it's in the person of Jesus. We have this person that is accepted, the authorized one and the exclusive anointed one that is capable of carrying out all the Father's plans in all our lives. He is the executor of the Father's will over us, in us, and through us. It's not just what is God doing, in the past for us. It is moment to moment making this transfer, embracing the person of Jesus rather than any other thing, and being transformed by that. Your contact with the Lord is going to transform you so that you shine. And when you shine, your family members and people around will be enraged because they deserve it. They want it. They deserve it. Okay? So that's like the infantile nature that we have in our family where they compete with us and sabotage all we're trying to do and try to hinder, block, stop the flow of the momentum that we get. And it's always bringing us back to square one by abuse and then hiding that abuse. So we're just addressing it as it is. God bless.